In this module, we're shifting from reporting to monitoring. Daily liquidity tells you where you stand. Cash movement alerts help make sure you don't get surprised. Now, in many Treasury teams, unusual movements or low balances are discovered by accident. Someone happens to notice. Someone happens to be looking at the right file at the right time. And that's not a control, that's luck. In this module, you'll build automations that continuously watch balances and movements for you. When thresholds are crossed, you'll get notified automatically, not hours later, not after someone stumbles across it, when it actually matters. This is where automation starts acting like a second set of eyes on your cash. So now for our cash balance alert workflow. We're going to start in the most important place, which is our process map. So we're going to start with the liquidity summary because I really want to emphasize to you that these 4 buckets don't change. So your step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, they don't change. They're going to be the exact same for every single one we build. Again, you may get fancy and do some sub workflows, but it's always these 4 steps. So we can just take our liquidity summary workflow and we can go from there. So we're going to call this our cash movement alert. We'll call this our cash movement alert, and we'll go from there. So this is designed for continuous monitoring, but you really, for the most part, don't want to have something truly continuously monitoring unless you're a very large enterprise with the capabilities to do that, because that is very data intensive. So for us, we're going to define continuous monitoring, which essentially is going to mean we're going to check balances every hour. So this is going to check our live balance feed every single hour. And that's the trigger. The trigger is going to be that this runs every single hour to see if an update is needed. Now, what is our data and inputs? So before we had account balances, transactions, current and prior days. In this case, what we want is we just want our bank account balances. These will be the real-time bank account balances. And we want our thresholds. So the thresholds of when we should be worried about a balance and when we shouldn't. Very simple data and inputs, but very powerful. Now, decisions and rules. So anything above a maximum threshold. Sometimes you don't want cash sitting in a checking account. Sometimes you want it sitting in an escrow or savings, so you can watch that. Anything below a minimum threshold, say don't send an update if everything is fine. So yeah, if it's above a maximum threshold, bad. Below a minimum threshold, bad. And if everything is fine, just don't send an update. We don't need it. This should really trigger action, and it shouldn't be hopefully triggering every single hour. That'd be a problem. And then define outputs. This will be an email notice to key stakeholders with an urgent update, just like before. The difference is, for our liquidity summary, you're going to get it every morning regardless. For this one, it's going to review every hour and only send if it's an alert. Now, you could also plug this into Teams. You can plug this into Slack. Wherever is easiest for you to get these alerts, that's where you can do it. I'm going to use email here because it's most common. But that's it. That's our process map. We're going to start and trigger this every hour. We're going to review bank account balances against thresholds. We're going to create an alert if there's a problem. If there's not a problem, no action is taken. And if there is a problem, it's going to email the notice to key stakeholders. And just like before, we're just going to snip this right into our ChatGPT tool. All right, here's my snipping tool. We're just going to grab our process map. Process maps are great, again, not just for organizing your thinking, but also for feeding into AI tools. So we'll grab that. We'll pop it in ChatGPT. Notice what we did before. Please review the attached process map to look for any gaps in the process or things I may not have thought of. All right, we'll send that away. I know we asked for a few extra things last time, but that was really teaching you about process maps. Now we're going to try to do this to focus on really building this automation since we've gone through our process mapping module. So it's saying every hour isn't always enough. That makes sense, but we really can't necessarily handle more than every hour just systematically. Data and inputs, real-time balance. See, static thresholds is a rookie mistake. Again, these are all really great things we could do as we think about scaling up the process or scaling up the enterprise. But let's keep this simple to focus just on the workflow building itself. And then email only is a bottleneck. Yeah, we can go to Slack, SMS, email. Again, we're trying to keep this as easy as possible. And then we're missing an ownership and action loop. That's good, but again, keep it simple. But this is overall a really great view into what could be missing in our process map. So now that we've got our process map complete, we've got our process map reviewed by AI, it's time to do our agent requirements document, our agent blueprint, and our system prompt. So let's go ahead and get a new clean snip of our updated process map. Here's our snip right there. All right, and we will put that into ChatGPT. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and paste our process map in there, and then let's grab our handy prompt to get started on the agent requirements. Act as a skilled financial analyst. Using the process map I provided via attachment, create a requirements document for an AI agent workflow using N8N. The document should spell out the purpose, the inputs, the rules, the outputs, the knowledge, and the tools. Ask me any questions you need to give the best possible output. So we'll send that away, and we'll let ChatGPT do its magic. Let's analyze the image, and this is a clean automation-ready process map. It's going to give us a proper AI agent and N8N requirements document, and here we go. The purpose of this AI agent workflow is to continuously monitor real-time bank account balances, evaluate them against predefined thresholds, and automatically notify key stakeholders only when action is required. We want to eliminate manual balance checks, reduce operational risk, and ensure leadership is alerted immediately. Here's all of our inputs, our primary inputs, our rules. So what is a minimum? What is a maximum? Everything's fine. Suppress repeat alerts, critical account override. And then here's our outputs. Automated email alerts, optional Slack and Teams notifications. We have audit logs. We could do a daily or weekly roll-up if we want, and then there's the knowledge. So our business knowledge, communication rules, escalation logic, and then there's all the tools. So our core N8N nodes, our example N8N flow, and then we've got some questions to lock this in that we'll go ahead and answer so it can clean up our requirements. All right, so let's say which bank or treasury platforms. We're going to say we want to keep this easy, so for now we will use Google Sheets. Okay. Let's see, thresholds live in Google Sheets, and updates are owned by the Treasury Cash Manager. Yes, we do want repeat alerts. Repeat alerts every hour. Any accounts that should bypass suppression, no. Channels, email only for now. Slack and Teams would be great, but that's a little bit fancier, so we'll save that for later. AI should format and recommend. AI should format and recommend. So we'll send that back. Now it's going to take our questions. It'll go back. It'll update the requirements, and then we can go from there with building out our blueprint. All right, so here comes back our updates. The changes will just be around where our questions were. Aside from that, we should get pretty much the same comment back. I like this translation. Humans stop babysitting balances. AI nags people only when money actually needs attention. So here's our inputs. Notice everything has now been updated to be Google Sheets because that's where we're going to have this stored. We've got our account balances and our thresholds, configuring our stakeholders, how often we're going to monitor. A little bit of an update to our rules based on the information we just gave it. We're going to have alerts continue to repeat till the issue is fixed. I mean, these are cash balances. We need that to keep coming through. Here's our outputs, the automated email alerts. You'll notice it's removed all of the comments about Teams and Slack because we're just going to do email. Here's our knowledge, recommended framework for the knowledge we want to work with. Our tools have now been refined to really focus on Google Sheets because that's what we're going to give it right now. It's giving a draft system prompt, but again, we'll do that later. And then here's the optional next step. And the first one, a node by node build map, that's the blueprint we're going to build. So this is our agent requirements, and we are all ready to go. So now we'll move on from the agent requirements to our blueprint. Let's go ahead and grab the blueprint. Act as a skilled financial analyst. Using the agent requirements you helped me write above, create a blueprint for my AI agent workflow. I will be building the agent in N8N. The blueprint needs to include the role, the responsibilities, the inputs, the workflow, the outputs, the guardrails. Ask me any questions you need to give the best possible output. We'll send that away, and we'll let it do its magic. All right, our blueprint is coming back. The role is going to be a Treasury balance monitoring and alerting agent. This is going to act as a Treasury ops assistant that monitors cash balances, compares them to policy, and sends clear, action-oriented email alerts. It's going to have 7 responsibilities: monitor the balances, validate the data is complete, evaluate against the thresholds, classify the severity of a breach, generate a human-readable alert, notify stakeholders by email, and then log everything it's doing for audit purposes. Here's our inputs. So for the purposes of this, Google Sheets will be the system of record. Clearly, we could connect to bank accounts if we wanted. We've got our workflow inputs, our AI context, and then the actual workflow. So step 0, trigger. We're going to pull the data. We're going to normalize the data. This is building in data quality checks and decision. We're actually going to ask it to move this into the AI agent because we can do that with the agent now. It's just using the AI agent for composing the email. But again, we'll tweak that. Here's the email alert and the logging, and then the end of run summary. I don't usually do these. It even says optional, but nice. But again, it's always better to get more back and not less. Here's our outputs, our guardrails. We've got them on both the data and the AI. Some communication guardrails. We'll have operational guardrails, and then some questions for it to tweak. So we'll answer the questions, and then in line with that, we'll ask it for our adjustment. Let's see. Balances are updated. Oh, I'll use a backward sign. Let's see there. Balances are updated by bank account download. Everything is USD. This is a chain of coffee shops in the US. Who should receive data quality exception alerts? Treasury cash manager. Let's see. Do we want recommended next step owner? Yes, this is great. And then the formatting preference for the email. We want this with HTML with a nice metrics block. Note that I want the AI agent to do both the email and also the evaluation against thresholds versus using the evaluate and if nodes you recommend it. Always feel free to tell it to change it. There's no reason to go off a blueprint that doesn't reflect how you want to build it. So you can answer the questions, but then say, hey, I just need you to tweak it. And it says here, got it. We'll let the AI agent do this. And N8N will act like the plumbing. Let's see. With one big caveat, you need guardrails so the agent can't decide that 2 million is fine because of vibes. That is true. So it's going to make sure it is structured JSON, and it's going to add in guardrails to make sure that it stays with our defined thresholds. So here's the updated blueprint. All right, so a couple of tweaks here saying, just we're going to be really specific about the email we send back. Not much of a change to the inputs or anything at all, really. Where it's going to change is now we're just going to do enough work on the data to get it ready for AI, but then everything about the evaluation and the composition is going to go through the agent. So it really shortens the process. If you remember before, audit logging, the last step was step 7. Now it's step 5 because we've condensed all that work down. And that's the whole point of this course, is to show you how to do these things with no code. And that's what we've done here. We've got our outputs, have our updated guardrails, have some additional guardrails now that we're having AI do a little bit more of the work. We have the AI agent contract, so this is the structured output, and then a few more questions for us. Now we won't answer these. These are getting really specific now. We're going to use the structure of this, but great to know it would keep giving us more information. So now with our agent requirements built and our agent blueprint, the last thing we need to set up here is our system prompt. So for the system prompt, I'm going to go back and get our handy prompt again. Our prompt for our system prompt that will crack me up every time. I think I'll make this joke in all 3 modules at this point. Let's pop this in here. All right, act as a skilled financial analyst. Using the agent blueprint you helped me create the master system prompt for my AI agent workflow. I will be building the agent in N8N. The system prompt needs to include the role, the tone, the rules, the behavior. Make sure the prompt is reliable, including step-by-step reasoning, explicit rules, output templates, fallback behavior. Ask me any questions you need to give the best possible output. We'll send that away, and we'll let it do its magic. All right, and here comes back our master system prompt already. You are an AI treasury monitoring agent embedded in an N8N workflow. You monitor bank account balances, you generate a stakeholder-ready email, and you must return structured JSON exactly in this format. Here's our tone. Again, with these kind of treasury updates, we want professional, direct, clear, and concise. Some non-negotiable rules, so nothing that it should not do, and these are hard constraints that it should not overcome. Here's the required fields we need to give. Here's how it should behave step by step. So A, B, C, D, E, and F. It needs to behave this way every single time. And then it needs to output this exact format in, notice, strict JSON right there. So this is the format, rules for numeric fields. Here's our email subject templates. Here's our email HTML template with a stakeholder alert. And we can use this exact structure for our email. All right, it's coming close to the end. Let's see if it has any questions for us as it wraps up. So before it gets to questions, notice it's also giving us an exception email template saying there's an issue with the data, it's unable to evaluate. So that's good. It's giving a fallback saying if something goes wrong, I'm going to send this email saying something went wrong. So this is if numeric parsing fails, if recipients are missing, if the owner mapping is missing. We've got the input assumption here. All right, so as it's wrapping up, there are two quick questions for us. Do we want a staleness threshold right now? If it's older than 2 hours, flag data issue. And for the recommended next step owner, should that come only from owner map or can the agent fall back to Treasury Cash Manager? So let's say I don't need a staleness threshold, and yes, it can fall back to Cash Manager automatically. All right, and then that should go in and update our system prompt for us. This simplifies things and makes the agent more reliable. So this is our final master system prompt. And as this wraps up, we can copy and paste this right into our agent. So now that our workflow is built out, it's time to do our final. So our first step is going to be the schedule trigger. I'm going to just pull this out a little bit because we'll need some more space. So we'll start with a schedule trigger. So we'll come over here on a schedule. Now, before we did this every day, now we're going to do it every hour with 1 hour between, and we'll execute. Nice, easy step to get us started. The next one we're going to do, because we're going to be pulling files down from Google Drive. Again, you can be fancy. You can connect this straight to your bank. You can connect this to your accounting system. I didn't really want to have my live banking system information pulled up here, so we're going to be doing this out of Google, but you can be as fancy or as simple as you want here. So let's just say for the purposes of this, it's an hourly download. Your bank file downloads to Google, and we're pulling it from Google, and that's what we're replicating here. So we'll go ahead now. We're going to do edit fields to set where we pull on from Google. And we can just carry this over from our previous example with the liquidity analysis. So we'll say we're going to do this with JSON. And I'm just going to get the exact same field we had before. So I'll put this here. Now this is going to use the source ID for our liquidity. So we need to go to Google to get the new ID. So again, we have our F9 Finance coffee shop that we know and love. This time, though, we're going to have this folder called Hourly Export. So here's the F9 Finance coffee shop we all know and love, but this time we're going to have a folder called Hourly Export, and this folder is going to hold our live balances. We'll take a look at that. So here's all of the individual bank accounts for our 3 locations, operating, checking, merchant, all the usual there. And then the other file has our thresholds, which is our minimum balance and our maximum balance alert, and how serious these are. So for instance, the reserve and savings, if it's a minimum or maximum balance, that's really just a notification. We aren't making transactions out of savings. So that's not going to warn us that it's an alert worthy. But if it's the operating checking account and it drops below the minimum balance, that's a big problem. So that's what we have here. We can go ahead and get the code for our folder. There it is. And we'll just replace that with the source folder ID. Again, this code was from our prior example, and we can just always go to reuse stuff that's already working. We'll execute that step, and there's the folders that So we execute that step, and there is our source folder ID set and ready for our Google Drive. Now we'll go over to Google Drive. We're going to download our file. All right, so now with that done, let's go ahead and go over to Google Drive, and we're going to use that folder name to find out what files are in there that we want to download, because we want to make everything as dynamic as we possibly can. So this is so far very similar setup to the liquidity balance, going to get files and prep the files for the AI agent. Where this is really going to change is what the AI agent does with it. But the structure, the bones of it really stay similar. So we're going to search the file folder name. Actually, we'll do this as the advanced search. That's what we want to do. Because we're setting this up as the same as our other one, I'm just going to bring the same query string over. It's referencing that node we created. Again, if something's working, just take it and keep moving it along. We don't want to limit it. We want to return all. And most importantly, the field we want to bring in is the ID, because that's what we'll use to download it. All right, that all looks good. We can execute. And there are our two IDs for our two folders. And there are our two IDs for our two files we want to work with. All right, now our next node is going to be our download node. So let's go ahead and pull up Google Drive again. All right, we're going to download. We're going to do it by ID, and it's going to be our IDs from our prior step. All right, and then we know right now that these are in Google Sheets format, so I want to set this up for Google File Conversion, so that way our Google Sheets will download as CSVs, and they're a little bit more usable to the code we're going to do in the next step. So we'll hit execute, and we should see our two files download. All right, and there they are. Brilliant. So now we can move on to our next step, which is going to be extracting from CSV. And again, so far, almost identical to what we did for the liquidity analysis. You know, once you start getting a feel for these workflows, once things work, it's a lot easier to put future ones together. All right, and this one is going to be extract. So we're going to extract our file from a CSV. It's going to be the binary field data, and we don't need any options. That's just going to feed it here. Now, for the next part, we're going to do the same coding node we did for liquidity analysis, but we'll need slightly different code. We're going to need slightly different code for this because we want to make sure it works with the type of files and the type of data we're using, and noting that it's not just all a bunch of data to work with, that we really have those thresholds and that we have those balances that we're working with, and we really want that called out separately. So we'll wipe this, and then we'll go over to our AI tool, and we'll ask it to help us. See, please write JavaScript to help stringify the output of the binary from the CSVs from Google Sheets. And now it will give us some lovely code that we can bring over. All right, ChatGPT is already coming back. So it's saying what it's doing, and then we should have the code node. There it is. So this is the code that we're going to copy and move right over as soon as we're able. I have more code coming in, and then it's saying here's how to use it in your workflow, and you'll use this after Google Sheets in a code node. So we'll go ahead and copy that. We're going to come over to our workflow, we'll paste that in, and that should clean everything up nicely into a nice AI payload. Excellent, look at that. Okay, so now our data is ready for the AI agent. So let's bring in our AI agent node. Here's our AI agent. Now this again is going to be referencing prior data. We don't need a chat in this case. We're also going to want to require a specific output format, and I'll get to that in a second. You'll notice when I did that, you'll see another little plus pops up down here, which is an output parser. And again, we'll talk about that in a second. We didn't use that before because we just wanted one specific output. Here, we're going to need at least two outputs, and I'll show you again what that means in a little bit. The prompt is just going to be the AI payload. That's where we bring in the data. And then we need to do a system message. And again, AI can help us with that. Say, please write the system prompt for the AI agent. Send that away. Oh, this is where the magic and the guardrails really matter. A tight system prompt keeps the AI from turning into a poetic finance intern instead of a ruthless, SOX-adjacent Treasury analyst. ChatGPT is so funny sometimes. So here comes our AI system prompt. It's giving us our inputs, the required calculations. We've got our alert rules, kind of what we want to be paying attention to. Our severity assignment, suppression and context, and then the required output format. So this is how it's going to output, and that's what's going to be feeding in to what we need to do. So this is going to not go into the system prompt. This is going to go into our output parser. We can really put it in both, which is what we'll probably do. And then here's what the email needs to look like and the objective. So there is our entire system prompt. Let's go ahead and copy that over. Okay, so there's our system prompt. Now we're going to go down and add our chat model. We'll just use OpenAI again for this. We're going to give this a code interpreter just to make sure it can understand the data. And we're going to move to GPT-5.2. Usually for things like this, I just recommend using kind of whatever's live in ChatGPT at the time. So there's that. We have our chat model. We don't need memory for this case because we're not going to have a chat back and forth. We do need a tool, and that tool is going to be thinking. I want this to have the ability to think, to make sure it's really thinking about the criticality. I want this to have a thinking tool to make sure it's thinking about how critical the alerts are, and also that it's evaluating the balances correctly. So it may not need to use it, but we're going to give it the ability to think should it feel that is necessary. And then lastly, the output parser. Now, the output parser lets you create structured outputs, so the AI must do it a certain way. You can do this as an item list, or you can do this as structured output, and that's what we're going to do. So the best thing to do here is to generate from JSON example. Now for that, that's the part I said right here. You can just Now for that, that's this part right here. You can literally just copy this over to the output parser. You can leave in the system prompt and put it over there, but always safer to say this is exactly what I want output. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to put our parser in there, and this means this is going to do two things for us. This is going to give us an email if something is wrong, and it's going to give us this node right here, this status. So it's going to have us tell us if there's an alert or if there's no alert, which we can feed into an if node. If nothing is wrong, it's just going to end the process. If something is wrong, it's going to email us. So that is going to be our AI agent. All right, we're going to go ahead and execute this step. It'll take a little bit to think here, but this should feed that output that we can then use to work with on the if node. All right, and our AI agent response has come back, and you can see up here the status is alert and we have critical errors. Now, that's expected because I set up the data set to have critical errors to show you what this looks like. So then if we come down here, because there's an alert, because it's critical, it's giving us the HTML and the subject line for our email because we do need to send an alert out. Now, before we get there again, how do we shut down the process if everything's fine? For that, we're going to use an if node. And this will let us create different branches. And you can create multiple different branches here, but we just need one. If status is equal to alert, then it goes through the true branch. Otherwise, it's false. We'll execute, and you'll see it is in the true branch. The whole thing is feeding through because there is an alert. False, that can just end. There is a node that ends it formally, but because this is running every hour, you don't need to use that. It's just going to end when it gets there. We're going to move forward with the true node, and we're going to send an email. All right, so from here, we're going to go to send a message. This is going to be very similar to what we did for the liquidity analysis. It's just going to be only as needed. So the two here, let's just send this to me for demonstration purposes. So the to email for now, we'll just do this to me for demonstration purposes. F9finance.com. Can't remember my own email. All right, our subject line, we're getting that from the AI tool, so we can pull that right over here. And here's the message in HTML. So we'll execute that. That should send a message. Sent. Then we can go to email and see if it's sent. And indeed, it did send. So here we are in my email. Here is my daily liquidity alert from January 23rd. And indeed, it did send. Here is my daily liquidity alert, noting that it is critical, so I need to look at this email immediately. And then it's telling me exactly what the issue is. So Astoria's operating checking is below minimum, and that is critical because it's checking. The Hell's Kitchen payroll account has a negative balance. That is also very critical. The reserve savings, it is above the max. There's more money in there than we need. Now, that's information for us, same as the reserve savings for Astoria, but what that's telling us is I have a place from which I can easily draw and move the funds. If someday you wanted to be really fancy, you could create an automation that could automatically move money from reserve and savings to checking. Never the other way around. That's a bad thing. But it can automatically move money from reserve savings to operating checking should this alert trigger the threshold. You can be as fancy as you want to be. But here it is, and even better, it's giving us some recommended actions. And just look how nice and clean and neat this email is, and we didn't have to touch a thing. How cool is that? So now with our cash movement alert built out, let's do our testing process again. We're going to snip our final format into ChatGPT and see what advice it can give us on testing. So let's go ahead and snip our cash movement alert here. There we go. We will copy that. We'll put it over here. And I'm just going to scroll up to grab our prompt from the liquidity summary. Except this will be a cash monitoring, my hourly cash monitoring automation. All right, and this is going to, again, help us design our test cases for validating the performance. All right, don't let cash quietly let itself on fire workflow. So some baseline should alert or should not alert. So again, this baseline one was the first test we did just to say, hey, is the workflow working? We tried an alert where there was an alert. We tried one there where there wasn't an alert. And that's where we're at. So then we've got our schedule and hourly timing, making sure it's running. What happens if there's multiple matches or if there's no new file available? What happens if there's a CV extraction quality? What happens if there's a CV extraction quality issue because the format will change the minute you relax? What happens with a JavaScript node test? What happens if there's any issues with the AI agent or structured output? Checking the node logic and then checking the email tests. So it gave us 23 different tests. Again, for basic workflows like this, we definitely don't need to be running 23 tests, but we want to make sure we get the big stuff. And then 2 missing but worth it, stale data detection and alert suppression. So let's go ahead. The first thing we're going to do is kind of do a test and say, what happens if the thresholds aren't available? So let's move that out. All right, let's move our thresholds out and run this and see what happens. All right, we're executing. It should download because there is a file there, but we're going to see if the AI agent is able to pick up that there's nothing there and if it's able to send us saying that there's something wrong. What we don't want to have happen is that we don't get a message. We want to know that it's not working and that the thresholds are missing. So we'll see how it's able to handle that. Now, what can be a good sign is as we watch the time, if it takes a little bit longer to run than usual, that could be the AI agent kind of thinking about the fact that it doesn't have anything there and really processing through that. So there's a problem in Node AI agent model output doesn't fit required format. So let's see what happened here. The structured output. So we were missing part of the structured output before we didn't have it. So it's a good thing we did this test. It just stopped. So we can go to settings. In this case, so typically when we're doing these ones that we want to know they're failing, we'll want to turn on this always output data because otherwise it stops. So even if it fails, we're going to want this to output the data because we want it to go to the if node so it will send us a message. Now let's go ahead and try that again. So we wanted to output an empty item if nothing would normally be returned. And we can work with that empty item because if it's empty, we can do another if node there to make sure that this keeps moving. Again, what we don't want to have happen is that they stop running entirely because then nobody gets a notice. And if you're having a busy day, you might forget that you don't have anything going on there. Okay, so again, the structured output parser is stopping. It's not moving forward. It's because it's erroring. It's not even able to give us something empty. So we need to add in something to the system message. Okay, so let's take our system prompt. I am hitting an error I need help fixing. If a data file is missing, and the system prompt below can't output the required format to the output parser, the workflow is stopping with an error. I need the workflow to be able to proceed so that the users get an error email, please make sure all of the structured output is filled. All right, so here's the system prompt. And then let's also give it, here is the output parser. Right. So again, no coding. You always have the tools here to help you out. So let's give an example of what our structure needs to look like. And we'll pop that in here. So in this case, because of the data not there, this was a really good test to run. There will always be an issue where some kind of data doesn't come through, and it's perfect that we're identifying this and going back to fix it. Yep, this is the classic parser is the bouncer. AI forgot its ID. Everyone else gets kicked out. So we need a guaranteed valid JSON response 100% of the time. So part one is we're going to update our system prompt to guarantee full structure output. We're going to add this under constraints. And we're going to make sure our JS node always emits a valid payload JSON even when the file is missing. And we'll make the AI logic explicitly treat missing file empty balances as alert. So here's what the missing file output should look like. All right, giving us a lot of information there. And here's a best practice end-to-end running. So it's giving us a lot of really good information here, but I want to show you how to get it to give us back something a little bit more specific so we don't have to worry about kind of doing the thinking and piecing this back together. Please give me an updated system prompt and an updated output parser example that I can copy and paste. So this is the trick. A lot of times it will just say, hey, fix this section, but then you have to go read something you didn't write in the first place and fix it. So what you can say is give me the whole thing to copy and paste, stop taking shortcuts, give me all of it so that I can send this right back in. So what I'm saying is just give me the system prompt, give me the output parser. When those are done, I can copy and paste them in. I don't have to go back and piece it all together. Much faster, much safer. You don't miss anything. You don't have to worry about messing anything up. All right, so our updated system prompt is coming. As soon as this writes, we'll go pop that in. Let me go back up to the agent. So that's where our system prompt will go. All right, system prompt is still writing. Boy, it's just incredible how much code this stuff can write, isn't it? All right, adding in our constraints. All right, so this is done. Let's pop this over here. Boom, and then we can go down to our output parser because that's the code that's being written right now. All right, here's our output parser, and that is all done. So we'll come back over here. We'll pop this in. And we can run our workflow again. So let's go ahead and execute this. So now it should feed data in for the output parser if there's an error so that we can still get an email. Because again, the last thing we ever want is for these to just stop working completely and we don't get an error. All right, it's working through the chat model. Last time it took 40 seconds, I believe. So we'll see what it does this time. Okay, so the workflow has successfully executed. Let's go look at the email. Perfect. So this time it ran, we got the output, and we're saying there's a breach for everything because the threshold's missing. Now note, it still said, hey, this account was negative, and it was still able to review, hey, regardless, a negative balance is not allowed under my things, but all of our thresholds are missing, and it's a warning for everything. So we got our email, which is what we want, and our actions. Restore or provide threshold configuration records, verify it ran successfully, verify the monitoring is reading correct thresholds, and immediately investigate the negative balance because that is critical and really bad. So we've fixed this, we've stabilized it, we've made sure it'll run in any situation, and that is exactly what we want to accomplish with testing. So now that our workflow is built out and tested, it's time to do our final two steps, which is going to be the leadership review prep and then the control sheet to hand this off. So let's start with the leadership review. Go ahead and paste in our trusty prompt here. Act as a skilled financial analyst. I want to document my workflow and its benefits for leadership. Using the blueprint provided, write a one-page overview and a headline summary. I built the agent at N8N. The one-page overview needs to include the purpose, the owner, the inputs, the outputs, the limitations. The headline summary needs to include this agent saves X hours a month, supports Y process, and has Z controls in place. Ask me any questions you need to give the best possible output. And we will go ahead and send that away. Perfect. Exactly the kind of leadership artifact that makes this feel real, not like a science project. Quick question. Roughly how many bank accounts does this cover? And I do need one final data point to finalize the headcount math cleanly, but here's the default. So this is our one-page overview. This automates the monitoring of daily cash balances and enforces policy thresholds. We've got our owner here, which is the primary Treasury cash manager supported by finance automation team. We have all of our different inputs. We have our outputs, the limitations, so no real-time integration at the moment, future enhancement, USD only, which is totally fine right now. Here's that summary. This agent saves 8 to 15 hours per month. It supports cash positioning and liquidity monitoring, and it has strong automated controls in place, the things leadership really care about. And optional, we can tighten up the ROI language if we want to flex it, and we can say how many bank accounts does this currently monitor. This is monitoring 15 bank accounts. So then it will go back and it will update our one-pager for us. And then once this is done, you can take this information, you can put it into a one-page memo if that's your company style. You can put it into a deck, a one-page slide, whatever you need to do, it's ready here for you. And here's our update. You'll notice it's added the 15 bank accounts. Excellent. And then when we get to the headline summary, now it's 15 to 25 hours, a little bit more since it's a few more bank accounts. And these used to require multiple daily reviews, spreadsheet updates, and follow-up emails. And here's the ROI logic if leadership asks, how did you get that? Fantastic. So that is our leadership review. Now for the last piece, we're just going to do the control sheet. This is what we'll use to keep audit happy, compliance, IT, and of course, make sure that we can pass this off to others. So act as a skilled financial analyst. I want to document my workflow for compliance and handoff. Using the blueprint provided that you helped me write above, as well as the audit logs, build a control sheet. I built the agent at N8N. The control needs to include the purpose, the data used, the permitted actions, the risks and mitigations, the test cases passed. Ask me any questions you need to give the best possible output. We'll send that away, and we'll see what we get back. Oh, chat's so funny sometimes. I love this. This is exactly how you make automation audit-friendly instead of that thing Mike built in a browser tab. So here's our control sheet for our automated cash balance monitoring and threshold alerting. The control type, it's an automated detective control. It runs hourly, and it's owned by the cash manager. This ensures that bank account cash balances are monitored on a continuous basis and evaluated against minimum and maximum thresholds. We have our data used, so our account balances, our thresholds, our alert recipients, our owner mapping, have our audit log information generated by the control, permitted actions. So it can do these 4 actions. Here are some business recommendations that it can give in advisory only. It will not act on any of them. Here are some risks and how we've mitigated them. So incorrect balance data, incorrect thresholds, alert fatigue, AI hallucinations, or workflow failure, and then all of the different test cases that we've passed. All right, so that's excellent within threshold range, missing thresholds, etc. Control, evidence, and audit support. And then it says we can also map this and add races and anything else we need to do. But that is our control sheet. This is ready to go if compliance asks, if audit asks, or if we need to hand this off as essentially a standard operating procedure. All of it written for us by AI. And with that, workflow complete. At this point, you've moved beyond static reporting. You've built automation that actively watches your cash and flags potential issues. That changes the role of Treasury from reactive to proactive. Instead of scanning for problems, you're only pulled in when something actually requires judgment. This reduces noise, it reduces missed issues, and it makes Treasury oversight more consistent. Now, in the next module, we'll take on a different kind of risk. Not timing risk, not balance risk, policy and compliance risk. I'll help you build an automation that helps you apply investment policy rules consistently and defensibly. So let's move into investment policy compliance.